Thank you.
It's all you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the SGA putting this on, and I certainly appreciate the students selecting me for this award. What I would like to do to start this presentation is, if you will, I'd like everybody to take out their cell phone. And if you would, go to the camera setting and reverse it so it's like you're taking a selfie. And then if you will, hold it up in front of you. And what I want you to do is to hold in your mind, if you had to describe what you saw there with one word, how would you describe it? Because I'll tell you what biology has to say about that. And that is that what you're seeing is a miracle. Now, you may not be accustomed to thinking of yourself as such, but I can tell you from a biological standpoint, you most certainly are. You, on the day that this all started, you had to outrace up to a few 100 million sperm to fertilize that egg. So I don't care what you do for the rest of your life. I don't care if you lose at every single sport, if you lose every game of tiddlywinks and tic-tac-toe. On that day, you are a champion. And that's just coming from one parent in one event. If you look at the cells from both parents and the chances that the two cells that made the person that you are, we're talking about a number, and this is a really conservative estimate. 1 in the quadrillions. By comparison, you are millions and millions and millions of times more likely to win the lottery than you are to be here. And so the question now is, what are you going to do with that extraordinary opportunity? So that's the way I always start my classes off in the fall each semester. And so what I was thinking about what advice I would give, and the thing that I kept coming back to was, if I could sum up the advice that I would give to anybody in just a couple of words, it would be these words. I would say care more. And you may say, well, care more about what? Care more about your purpose and finding it, and care more about all the people that are associated with it. And make sure that you don't just hold that up here, but find ways to show people, find ways to demonstrate that. And make sure that all your actions, this reverberates through everything that you do. And don't, you really can't take you can't take a day off when you do this. It's a 365-day-a-year endeavor, and you have to live it every single day if you're going to do it right. And you may say, well, I don't know what my purpose is, or how do I find my purpose? And it's okay if you don't know right now. This talk is supposed to be tailored to both incoming freshmen and graduating seniors. And you may not know at 18 what you're going to do with the rest of your life. You may not know at 22. I can tell you that when I was 18 years old, I didn't know what I was going to do. And when I was actually 22, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. And I had a very convoluted path to get to where I am now. So this is a picture I took from my class actually this Thursday. And I can tell you that When I was younger, when I was a teenager, I was intimidated to talk to 3 people, much less 300 people. And so I had a couple of things that happened to me that really changed that I could have never predicted. One of them was I got hit by a semi-truck. And it was pretty bad. I had some brain damage, and I was in a coma for a couple of days. And when my sister came to the hospital, she was the first person there, the doctors told her that I was not going to make it. And then they told my parents that I had a 5% chance of getting back to normal. And they were about half right, because I don't think I've been normal a single day since then, but I definitely came back. And what it did, though, is it changed my outlook on things. And I can tell you, when we talk about caring more, that my parents and my sister were there around the clock, 24/7. They were talking to me even when I couldn't hear them. And if it hadn't been for them, and it hadn't been for the fact that they cared more, there's no way that I would be here. And so I'm eternally indebted to them for what they did, for my family and my friends that really helped to pull me through. And what it also did was it changed my perspective on kind of everything. And so the first thing I can remember is that I was actually out on the lawn of East Alabama Medical Center. I was out there in my hospital gown, and I was dancing on the lawn with no music. And y'all, I couldn't dance before I got hit by that truck. And the amazing thing was that after, I still couldn't dance, but I did not care. And so it kind of made me feel like I was playing with house money after that. But really, you think about it, we're all playing with house money. And so what it made me go out and do was to go out and to, try new things, to be less shy, to take new opportunities. But I encourage all of y'all to do that. Go out, search, try to find what you love and what you're passionate about, and also where your gifts align with the things that you care the most about. And the second thing that really happened to me that changed everything is I started teaching when I was 22. So I started teaching labs. And y'all, I was eaten up with it. I loved it. It was like I'd almost been hit by a second truck. I loved it so much that when you go into graduate school, you're either you're a teaching assistant or you're a research assistant. And so you get paid for one or the other. And I started off as a teaching assistant, but then I got a research assistant. So I got paid to be a research assistant, and I didn't get paid to be a teaching assistant. And what I did, though, I love teaching so much that I volunteered to teach for free. And I would just go and teach classes, and they thought I was crazy. They're like, "You're gonna do what?" And I was like, "Yeah, put me in a class, I'll go in there, I'll teach it for free." And they're like, "You're not on TA, we're not gonna pay you anything." I said, "I don't care." I said, "Put me in there." I loved it so much, I didn't want to go home at the end of the day. And so keep looking until you find something like that. Keep looking until you find something that consumes you, and then you'll know that you found the right thing. Now, you also are going to want to surround yourself with people that care more. I was very fortunate to be on the PPAC committee, which interviews biomedical students as they're applying to either medical school or dental school. And some of these students were phenomenal, y'all. These students are some of the most outstanding students at Auburn University. A lot of them had 4.0s and 3.9s in one of the hardest majors at Auburn. And so what I would always do is I would try to ask them as many questions as I could to understand how they had been so successful. And one of my favorite questions was, if you had to talk to yourself, because these were graduating seniors at this point, I said, if you had to talk to yourself as a freshman and tell yourself one thing, what would it be? And the answer that I got over and over and over again was, I would find a group of people to surround myself with that had the same passion for the subject that I do. They said, because it's so much better if you go through this with other people, with a group. You're going through the same struggles, you're studying for the same classes, you're going through this with other people that understand exactly what you're going through. People that, again, care more about what they're doing and care more about others. And that is, like I said, that's the answer that I got over and over and over again. And I encourage you to do the same thing. You know, no matter what you're in, surround yourself with others that care more and are passionate about whatever their purpose is, and that care more about other people as well. And so I think there's an idea out there that that biologists may be a little bit odd. And I'm about to show you some pictures, I think, that will only reinforce that stereotype. But these are some of my closest friends, and they're all biologists. This situation here, this is my buddy Judd, and this coyote was damaging some corn that they had planted. And so his solution to this was to run this coyote down on foot and catch it by hand. And so he did, and I can tell you that no coyotes or humans were hurt after this. He relocated it and released it soon after he caught it. This is my other buddy. He studies rattlesnakes in Aruba and burrowing tortoises called gopher tortoises. But in his spare time while he was here, he was the call man for the Auburn Police Department. Whenever anybody had a rattlesnake in their yard, he would come and get the rattlesnake and take it out and release it somewhere. Now, the third person I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to show you a picture of something we did first. So it may be a little hard to see what's going on here, but if you look right there, that's an alligator. And so my buddy is a crocodilian biologist. So he studies alligators and he studies crocodiles. And we were doing a mark recapture study. And my friend Sean is back there. He helped us on this as well. And so what we would do, though, is we'd go out and we'd catch these gators, and then we would mark them, and then you turn them loose, and that's how you get a population estimate. And we had this one gator, though, that we called the magic gator. And what it would do is it would outsmart us every time. So we'd go, it lived in this waterway right next to a culvert, which is a pipe under a road. And what it would do is every time we try to catch it, it would slide into this culvert where we couldn't get it. And so you can see that's what it's doing right here. This is during the daytime. So we had the bright idea that we'd come back at night and try to catch it when it was probably less weary. And so we came back at night, but unfortunately this gator outsmarted us again, and it went into the pipe. And so my friend's idea was, he said, this is what we're going to do. And you can see that's the pipe right there the gator was going into. He said, we're going to block off one end so this gator doesn't have anywhere to go. And then he said, you and I are going to go in there and we're going to catch this gator. And I said, okay. And what he had is he had this bucket right here, and he had a snare, which is just really a stick with a loop on the end of it. And you can see that we blocked off the end of the culvert right there. And then we went into this pipe to catch this gator. And so I didn't have anything, and we're going down this pipe, and we're hunkered down. I couldn't see anything because he was in front of me. And we got about halfway down the pipe, and he stopped, and he said, hey, I said, hey, he said, that gator is a little bit bigger than I thought it was. He said, we're still going to catch it though. And I said, okay. And I should tell you this about my friend is that he catches 1,500-pound crocodiles by hand by jumping on them, but he's terrified of spiders. And so he went a little bit further and he said, hey man, there's some really big spiders in here. I said, you focus on the gator. And so long story short, this is the end result. And so we did catch that gator. And so they say that you're a composite of your closest friends. Which I don't really know what that says about me. But y'all, this is just a sideshow stuff. All of these guys are, they're just as dedicated to their purpose. They are so dedicated to their research. They're so dedicated to their teaching. They're so dedicated to their outreach. That's how they do everything. And they also not only care more about what they do, they care more about other people. And I can promise you, I could call any of these guys up at 3 a.m. and say, hey, I need you to be here. And they'd go out and get in their truck and crank it up, and they would head in this direction. And if their trucks didn't crank, they'd probably carjack somebody and still head in this direction. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's how they are. And so if you don't have any friends like that, keep looking, because I found them all right here. Now, I know this concept of kind of caring more is a little bit abstract, so what I'm going to try to do is give you some more concrete examples now. And so I think that really there are three, you can kind of break it down to 3 C's. And so the 3 C's to me are, you want to be creative, be courageous, and be consistent. And the next person I'm going to talk about, I've never met. I just know him from the pages of books and from documentaries, but he really exemplifies this. And so this, oh, there's my buddies again. I forgot about that one. So this guy's a doctor, and his name is M.O.J. Freireich. And he started working on childhood cancer in 1955. And when he started, he was working on childhood leukemia. The mortality rate for these children was 100%. And not only did every child that had this disease, they all died. They died these horrible, awful deaths. They said that you would go into the hospital and these children would just start bleeding from everywhere. And they said there'd be blood on the walls and blood on the beds, and the nurses would come in and their uniforms that started off white would just be saturated in blood by the end of the day. And this doctor came in, and the way to basically deal with this problem at the time was to just try to make these children as comfortable as they could until they passed. And this doctor, he did not accept that. He did not accept the status quo. And he said, we've got to try something different. We've got to figure, something out for these children. And so what he did is he started combining these cancer drugs together. And everybody told him, this is his quote from a book by Malcolm Gladwell. He said everybody said he was crazy because they said that these cancer drugs had these horrible side effects, and they said you can't do that to these children. And he said, look, we have 100% mortality. He said we have to do something different. And so they started giving these drugs in cocktail to these children, and what happened was, the way the drugs worked is that once they were combined like this, that were so much more effective in treating the cancer. And he was able actually to almost completely reverse this situation working with a team of other scientists, so that now the cure rate for this type of cancer is about 92% for these children. And the reason he was able to do that is because he did not accept the status quo. And he was creative in his approach to it, and he knew who he was there for. He was there for those children, and he was not going to accept the current situation, and he was going to keep working. He's going to keep fighting for these kids. And again, he was able to turn the situation completely around. And so I'm not asking you to go out and cure cancer, but whatever you're in, whatever your purpose is, don't accept the status quo. When you go in, find ways to do it better. Be creative in your approach and keep working until you find not just a solution, but try to find the best solution. And certainly, like I said, I've never done anything as heroic as this doctor did. But, we're all presented with problems and with situations. And in those situations, try to figure out ways that you can be intentional and you can show that you care more about the people that are involved in that situation. And so here, of course, in the last couple of years, we've all faced challenges that we had never faced before with the pandemic. And a couple of years ago, when we all went online and we all went on computers for these classes, that's really kind of the antithesis of the way that I like to teach, because I want to be in person, I want to be in a classroom with the students. And so I got to thinking, if there's any way that we could get outside, that we could keep teaching in person when everybody else was locked down, when everybody else was inside, when nobody else was having real classes. And so I thought, if we had like a jumbotron, we could actually keep teaching these classes. And so I went and started talking to Morgan Pendergrass, who's the director of the Arboretum, and she really put in a ton of work on this and covered all the details, and it was just amazing in this situation. And also I had support from my department chair, Dr. Santos, and straight on up the line, Dr. Boyd and our dean. And so what they did was they got us a jumbotron. And so while everybody else was inside and on a computer, we went outside. And we had in-person classes when nobody else was really having in-person classes. And I'm not going to lie to you, we didn't pack it out every single time, but the students had the opportunity to have a real class and to be there. And this was just a simple thing, but be intentional and try to be as creative as you can in exhausting all possibilities when you're dealing with people. And the other side of creativity is that if you're creative and if you try new things, you're going to fail, and sometimes you're going to fail a lot. But the key is, don't fear that failure. Strive for success, do everything you can to succeed, but don't be so scared of failure that you will not try things that seem impossible. Because if you do, you'll never reach your ceiling. You'll never know what you are capable of. And so when I started coming in, I started teaching these big lecture classes. I'd always learn my students' names in my classes. And then my classes just kept getting bigger and bigger. And one semester I came in and I had 710 students. And so I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I said, I'm going to try to learn everybody's name in here. And I said, not only am I going to try to learn everybody's name in here, I'm going to try to go through the classes on the last week of classes and I'm going to try to name all of them in class. And so I went into class. I had this one student in there. I think he had the biggest hair of any student that I've seen in 20 years. This guy's hair was gigantic. And so, I'd watch him walk into class every day with that hair and just wonder like how he could even walk with that much hair. But on the day that I was going to name off all these students, I walked into class and I got in there and I was just kind of scanning the room and I look up at the very top of the class. There's this guy sitting up there, this really pale, bald-headed guy. And I'm like, I have never seen that person in my life. Like, who is that? And so I'm going through the class. I'm just rattling off all these names as I'm going. I just keep looking at this guy at the top of the class. And I'm just hoping that I'm going to get some kind of epiphany before I get to him in the class and that his name is going to come to me. And I'm going up and up and up. And I get closer and closer. And finally I get to him and I said, man, I'm sorry. I was like, I don't know who you are. It was the guy with the giant hair, and he had shaved his head the day before, and then he rolled into class. And so, you know what, y'all? I failed that guy because I did not know his name. I knew the other 709, but I did not know that guy's name. And so, again, when you try things that are really difficult, when you try things that seem impossible, you're going to fail. But don't let that dim your creativity. Don't let it make you not attempt to do things that are really, really difficult and are really, really hard. Now, the last C that I told you about a minute ago is probably the one that I would say is the most underrated. And so that is consistency. And consistency is, it's one of those things that it's not sexy. It sounds boring because it's doing the same thing over and over and over again. But consistency is probably the one that breeds the most trust in people because they know they can count on you. They know that you're going to be there for them. And so in 20 years, a little over 20 years of teaching, I've never missed teaching a class because I was sick. And so I've taught through feeling not quite well a lot of times. I've taught through a broken bone or two, but I've never missed a class for being sick. And during the break, a week before classes started this time, my stepdaughters both got COVID, and they were coming home to us. And I knew that if I got COVID, that I was not going to be able to go in and teach. And, teachers will tell you too, the first day is probably the most important day of the semester because that's when you set the tone for the rest of the semester. And so I didn't want to miss any class, but I certainly did not want to miss the first day of class. But I also did not want to just take off and leave my family because certainly I care more about them as well. And so I kind of struggled with a solution to this problem. And it was early January, but this is what I finally came up with. I just moved out into the yard. And I did, after this, we have a bed swing, so I hopped from the tent to the bed swing. But I was there on the first day of class. And I also learned some things. I learned that you can sleep outside when it's 22 degrees, but you better cover everything, and you still leave one little hole like that to breathe out of. But consistency, y'all, is important. I think my students in a lot of cases think I may be a little soft in the head because I end every lecture the same way. I say, if you have questions, if you need help on any of this stuff, let's get it figured out. And I just repeat that over and over and over again. I tell them all the time, if you don't give up in this class, I will not give up on you. And that's because I want that message to ring in their ears above. If they forget everything else I say during a lecture, I want them to remember that, because that's what my job is. That's what I'm there to do, is to help those people. And so, again, I want them to understand that under any circumstances that I'm there to help them. Now, our next thing that I'll move on to here is something that's really important for all of y'all. Is not only do you need to care more about other people, but you need to care more about yourself. And the only way that you can be at your best and be there to care more about other folks is if you're healthy, if you're in a good place mentally. And there's a silly question that I ask in my introductory biology, and it's we're studying genetics, and we're talking about how traits are passed down from one generation to the next. And so to kind of lighten things up, what I do is I say, all right, what I want you to do is I want you to tell me, most people will talk about if they ever have children, they want their children to have this certain trait, right? They want their children to have their hair color or, their eye color or something like that. I said, that's a good enough question, but the more fun question is, what is the one trait that you have that you do not want your kids to inherit? And it doesn't have to be physical, it can be behavioral or anything else. And typically, these are the types of answers that I got. And so, as you can see, no problem with self-esteem or with ego. Occasionally I get ones like this too, which I think they meant to write my eyes, because if your kid doesn't have any eyes, it is not going to be an easy life for them. But what I've seen in the last 2 years is I've seen things change quite a bit. And so I've gotten some answers. Again, it's a silly question that really should get a bunch of silly answers. But what I've seen increasingly in the last 2 years are answers like this. That they don't want their kids to get their anxiety. They don't want their kids to get their depression. They don't want their kids to get their stress. And to me, I think would be startling to most people. I think we have this idea that 18 to 22-year-olds or people that are in college, are not stressed out, that they're not anxious. And this shift, I think, has come because of a couple reasons. I think, again, we've been a lot more isolated in the last couple years. Also, what has happened is I think a lot of us try to live up to these expectations that we think that other people have. And so what I would tell you is that there's only one person in this world that you really have to impress. And that person may be the meanest person you deal with on a given day. They may look at you and tell you that you look horrible. They may wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning because they won't shut up. They may tell you at times that you're not enough. And you may say, well, why would I let somebody that awful in my life? And it's because it's that same person you saw on that cell phone. And I think the answer to that, the remedy to that, is just remember that you've been enough ever since the start. Now, we know that long-term stress is debilitating. There are all kind of negative effects that are associated with that. And the next person that I'd like to talk about a little bit is my cousin. And so this is my cousin from Uganda. He grew up in Uganda until he was 13, and then he came to the United States, and my aunt and uncle, who are also here all the way from Oklahoma, they adopted him. And he went through more probably in an hour than the rest of us have been through, in a lot of cases, in our entire lives. He lost friends and relatives to illness and to violence, and probably has the best attitude of anybody in our family. When it comes to caring more, his name is Biakwaso, we call him B. He is always there for every important family event. This was at my wedding a few years ago. He came all the way from Missouri, didn't tell me he was coming, but I should have known right from the start that he was going to be there. And of all the stress that he's had to deal with, you would never know it talking to him. And he walks in faith every single day, and he's got, like I said, he's got the most amazing attitude. And what we know about long-term stress is that your connections to other people are probably the best remedy. Your ability to care more for other people is the best barrier against this long-term stress. And y'all, we live in a world now that, is always trying to distract us, that makes it, easier to click on somebody's link or their post or story that is more sensational and tries to just divide us further and further and further. And I think there's also an easy remedy to that as well. If you would, pull your cell phones back out. All right, point them to the left or the right, wherever the nearest person is to you. Yeah, don't take a picture of them, but just point it at them. What you need to remember is that all those people are miracles too. And I think if we would keep that in mind, if we would remember that, then all this division, all this fear that a lot of us have would start to disappear. All right, the last thing that I'm really going to talk about here is it's probably, when you're caring more, it's probably the ultimate. And I would say what you want to do is love completely and love without reservation. And my wife and my stepdaughters have taught me more about that than I could ever imagine. And y'all, I know it's terrifying for a lot of us, but do it anyway. Because if there's anything that bends the edges of science and everything we know, it's love. I wish that you will take this opportunity. Again, you have defied the most staggering odds to be here. Ever since you were that one cell, ever since you took that first breath, you have been given an extraordinary gift. And so I hope you make the most of it. I hope you have the most amazing life. And I hope that you're as blessed as I have been, because it's been the honor of my life to be able to care so much, to be able to care more about such an amazing group of students through all these years. Thank you, and War Eagle. Thank you, Coleman.
That's great.
Appreciate it. All right, we done?
We're done.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming tonight. I know the national championship basketball game is on right now too, so it's a lot of competition.
One more round of applause for Professor Cook.
Yeah, I know. You're in there.
Yeah, thank you again.
All right, thanks y'all.